Hello everyone, my name is Jack. I'm part of Edumundo, and today I'm going to be introducing or more of an instructional video as to what you should be doing, especially in the first round of your Phone Ventures simulation. Before we get into things and talking through the various points within the simulation, there are a couple of things to note before you get started. First and foremost, this is a competitive scenario. You've all been put into teams, and within your team, you are now the owners or the management of your very own globally operating smartphone company. However, you're going to be competing against each other. So, for example, the decisions and actions of Team A will have a direct impact on the results of Team B, Team C, Team D, and so on and so forth. And you're all going to be competing against each other for market share. A couple of other things to note is that the simulation is also played in rounds. There is a schedule that will be specific to your very own simulation, and based on that schedule, which you can always find, which again I'll show later on, under the communication tab and simulation schedule, the exact date and the exact time as to when everything needs to be within the simulation and saved within the simulation. If not, the previous rounds or the simulation's default decisions will be taken, and therefore you may not get the results you were hopefully expecting. The final thing is that although it is a competitive simulation and there is a ranking table, ultimately this is a learning experience and it's only a virtual business environment, and our whole motto is learning by doing. So everything that you're going to learn or have learned within the classroom, you're hopefully going to be applying within this simulation. But that's about it in terms of everything that I wanted to cover, just a little bit of background about the simulation. But once you've logged in, which you will receive in terms of a PDF that maybe your lecturer has handed out to you or Edumundo person has handed to you, it could be either on a piece of paper or, for example, a digital PDF. On that page, it will have the link to the simulation where you can log in, which is more often than not management.simulations.edumundo.com. On that page, you will then be able to access the sim by selecting the correct game name that is listed, but also your team username and your team password. They are not individual logins, they are team logins. So everyone within your team has the exact same details. One of the first steps you may want to take when you first access the simulation in this first round is to come up with your very own company profile. So for example, this is the dashboard or the home page that you'll see, and you'll be able to access all of the different areas of the simulation from this page, but also from every other page as well. But in the top left-hand corner, you'll be able to see, for example, the company profile tab. If you select company profile, you will then be able to access a few different bits of info. For example, if we then select company branding, we can come up with our very own company name, a little slogan or description of your company, and even upload your very own logo. A nice creative exercise to get started with you and your team members. You'll also see that at the bottom of the page, there is a save button. This will be on the bottom of every single page where you can make any change or any decision. So it's really important if you have made a change that you're constantly saving and constantly updating. But that's probably the first step that you want to take within the simulation. Next is then adding yourself, where, for example, under the board members tab, you can choose to designate roles for one another. Maybe one person is a marketing manager, another an HR manager, operational manager, maybe even a CEO. It is entirely up to you and your team members as to what roles you may want to give one another. This is also quite important because if you would like a certificate at the end of this simulation, if you don't fill in your name here, it's going to make our lives a little bit easier in terms of handing out that certificate once you've completed the sim. Of course, there's going to be a winner, as there can only be one, but there will also be participation certificates that will be handed out as well. The final bit in the profile is the introduction text. So if you are ever wondering where to start within the simulation after completing the company profile, then you can always take a look at this page. And as you can see, it suggests that you should do a little bit of an internal and external analysis. If we take a look at the external analysis, we can actually already get started on this page, where, for example, we can see a list of all of the available countries along with the 3 main customer groups in each country. That being price, quality, and customer intimacy. Depending on the country, there will be varying total demand levels based upon prerequisites within that country. So for example, let's take an example of the Netherlands. At the moment, in the price segment, there is a total demand of 750,000 people. What that means is that 750,000 people are looking for a phone that is very cheap or very affordable. Compare that to the quality, where there is 100,000 people looking for a very high quality phone and maybe more willing to pay a premium price. And last but not least, there is customer intimacy, which is more a little bit somewhere in the middle, where they're ultimately looking for really high customer service levels, but also really good innovation within their smartphone. But ultimately, in this customer segment, we can see there is 160,000 people looking for that type of phone. In the very first round, you will see only 3 markets available or 2 markets, depending upon your simulation. However, each and every round, more and more countries will become available. So for example, once you reach maybe, let's say, the 4th or the 5th round of your sim, you can see a list of all of the different types of countries that will be available for you to do business in. If you ever want to see what countries will be available in the upcoming round, all you need to do is head to the communication tab, which is back at the top of the page. Simply click. Once there, you can then access the different tabs at the top, where ultimately in the simulation schedule, it will, for example, state what is happening in that round. Again, you'll also be able to access those deadlines as to when you need to input all of your decisions. In terms of a bit of other external analysis, other than taking a look at the countries and the total demand levels, you can also see the news items, which is again in the communication tab in the top left. These news items will sometimes be positive and sometimes be negative. Each round, they are going to be updated, and it's your job to keep an eye out in terms of what will be occurring in a specific market or overall within the industry. Simply by clicking on a news item, you will see a little bit of text, and within that text, it will state what will be occurring within that market or within the industry in general. But again, maybe not too important in the very first round, so instead I would recommend that you just keep an eye on what round is coming up and what countries will become available in the following round. In terms of some other analysis that you could do, but is not necessary in the first round, is internal. And in the internal analysis, if we head into the results, you'll be able to see some financial and non-financial results. For example, with the financial results, we have a balance sheet, an income statement, a cash flow statement, but also internal results around staff metrics, inventory, as well as your sustainability score. I'm only going to touch upon these areas because ultimately they will not have a significant impact in the first round because you are a brand new business, but there are a couple of things that I would like to highlight. For example, in the balance sheet, you will see that every team will start out with a cash position of around 500 million. This is to make sure that you don't go bankrupt in the first year. So if this number ever does reach near zero, you are probably in a bit of financial trouble and you want to go to the help desk to try and get some tips and tricks, which I'll show how you can access right at the end. But in the balance sheet, it's really important that you note that you have 500 million in starting capital. In the income statement, it will of course show your profit and loss. However, it will be empty in the very first round because you are a new business and therefore haven't had any sales yet. But again, you can see where, for example, you have made a profit or a loss. There is a variation of a cash flow statement where, for example, if you want to take a deep dive in terms of some of the costs of your business, you can take a look at this page. But again, not too important in the first round. You will also see that the inventory tab will be completely empty in the very first round. And that is because ultimately, again, you have no sales and therefore have no sales to track as well. For the rest of these tabs, so for example, staff metrics, where you can take a look at your workload, motivation, education, and externally hired staff members, and your sustainability score. I will be going over these in more detail in a frequently asked questions video, which you can find, for example, in the description just below. And in that frequently asked questions, I'll be going over in more detail how you can analyze your business decisions and more specifically, how you can analyze your results. But for now, just this results tab, it's good to know that this is going to ultimately be affected by all of the decisions that you're going to be taking. And one of those decisions, especially in the very first round, is to come up with your very own business plan. And within this business plan, there are several different elements that you're going to need to fill in. For example, probably one of the most important is setting a competitive strategy. Do you want to be a cost leader, product leader, customer intimacy leader, or even a combination type of approach? If you would like, there is also a little text box that you can fill out just below to expand upon your ideas as well. But this is really important as this is going to guide your decision and your operational decision-making process. So whatever you fill in here will ultimately influence what you're going to take in terms of some of the several departments such as marketing and HR later on. Other areas of the business plan that you can fill out, especially in the first round, is a vision statement. In this vision statement, you can choose 3 different statements to maybe try and focus on within your business. Once you've selected a 3, again, it is up to you entirely as to what you would like to choose. But for example, you can then order what, for example, is your highest priority. And again, you can write down a little bit more in the statement just below. Do keep in mind that again, there is always going to be a save button that you'll need to press if you do not, or if you do make any changes within the simulation. Other aspects of the business plan that I'll touch upon briefly is a SWOT analysis. If you would like, you can fill in your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But again, may be more important in the second round of the simulation rather than the first round of the simulation. I will also note that everything within the business plan can be changed every single round. But for example, you don't want to change too much because ultimately you'll need to revamp all of your operational decisions. So I would recommend that you stick to a similar strategy or the same strategy throughout the simulation. But that doesn't mean you can't change, for example, if you see some competitors that are doing the same. But the other business plan elements is a growth strategy where you can choose what selection you would like to go with. But the most important ones are the sustainability policy and the targets. With a sustainability policy, we're using the UN's 17 SDGs. And within this page, you'll be able to select up to 4 different focus points. For example, you can choose any 4 as per usual, but ultimately, if you select a 4th, there will be an additional investment cost of £500,000. So you can choose to only go with 3 if you would like, 2, 1, again, it is up to you. But ultimately, sustainability is becoming an increasingly important factor with today's businesses. What you also need to know is that not every single SDG is going to be achievable within this simulation based upon all of the decisions. For example, as a quick tip and recommendation, you should not choose the life below water because there is no decision affecting that focus point. But the final step within your business plan for the first round is setting targets. And if there is one thing that you need to do within this simulation, other than selecting a country to do business in, is selecting targets. Because ultimately, this is how you're ranked and how you're going to earn points. As you can see within this targets tab, there are several different ones to choose, whether it's financial, customer, internal, or learning and growth. And for each of these targets, where you'll need to select 5 from, well, the list, again, entirely up to you. But let's say we select the education level of staff. But you'll also see for everyone else, there is also a slider that you can adjust. This slider represents your level of ambition. The higher you set the slider, the more points you can earn. However, if you do not reach the target, you will earn 0 points. So it's really important that you make sure these targets are realistic and achievable. And again, you can change these target levels every single round. But in a little bit more detail, what's really important is that one of the 5 that you've selected is a KPI or a key performance indicator. This can be done by simply checking the box. All this does is multiply your score by 5 times. So for example, the maximum number of points you can earn for a target that has been set to the highest level is 200. However, if it's been selected as a KPI, if you do the maths, it is 1000 points. And if you do even more quick maths, what that means is that for one target alone, you can earn more points than the rest of the targets combined. So it's really important that you select a strong KPI that you're guaranteed to hit every single round. And again, just to mention, there will always be that save button at the bottom. But that is about it for everything within the business plan and everything that you should do in the first round. Just to quickly recap, complete a competitive strategy, choose vision statements, select a growth strategy, choose sustainability policies, and finally, select targets. Once you've done that, you can now apply that strategy through operational decisions. So for example, under the Decisions tab, the first step that you may want to take in this interactive HQ is to go into the Countries tab. Probably the most important tab in the entire game, other than maybe the targets that I've mentioned a little bit earlier. Because ultimately, this is how you're going to get sales, how you're going to get revenue, and how you're going to enter into a new market. What you'll see on this countries tab is firstly a list of all of the available markets within your simulation. Again, in the first round, there will only be 1, 2, 3 countries that could be available. And then after a round has been calculated, you will then see more markets open up, where eventually you'll see a list similar to this one. Along the right-hand side, you'll see if there is a green check mark, all that means is that you've made a decision within this country, whether it's entering or exiting that market. If you see the little building icon, that means you were based in that market in the previous year. But again, this will only be more important after the first round of calculation. But let's say we want to do business in one of these countries. We've actually had a look at maybe the profile tab, specifically the introduction text, and we've had a look at the total demand in each of these different segments. And let's say we want to do business in France because it links with one of the competitive strategies that we may have chosen, and therefore we feel we could do well in that country. So if we select France, we'll firstly see a load of information along the right-hand side. The yearly local office costs, the amount of computer competition, the sustainability score, the corruption score, the amount of staff that you're going to need to hire on average. Again, this is just an average and not maybe realistic, depending on the demand you experience. We can see those market segment sizes yet again, and a bit of other information that you can take a look at as well. But let's say we want to enter and do business. Check the box and we'll see a range of decisions that will pop up. We'll more than likely have to jump around each of these pages. So for example, jumping from the countries page to the product, to the HR, to the management. So it's really important that maybe within your team, one person is on the product page, another on the countries page, another on HR, just so you can all make the correct decisions. But the first decision within every single market is the price. For example, there is a low point and there is a high point. Based upon your strategy, your decisions that you're going to be taking later on, you want to set a fair price, but again, always keep in mind the customer segment that you want to target. A few other decisions that you can take is local marketing. So would you like to do some penetration marketing if you've newly entered into the market? What sort of budget would you like to allocate in millions? What target group do you then want to focus on? And also, maybe you want to support the local community by giving a percentage of your turnover. Other more local decisions include local independent organizations helping out or a business partner helping out, maybe collaborating with the government a little bit. Again, it is up to you. But lastly, and probably most difficult, is the inventory management. Again, I'm going to be going over this in a Q&A or feedback / frequently asked questions video, which will be in the description. But ultimately, this is how you're going to keep up with the demand that you're experiencing. Firstly, you'll need to select a warehouse location where, for example, you can choose a very small to a very large warehouse. For example, in the first round, you may want to try and forecast the demand that you may experience. And that can be done by taking a look at the market segment sizes, where, for example, maybe you want to say you want to capture 30% of the price segment. Based upon those figures, you would then divide that number by 52 weeks in order to get an average demand per week. Because I'll show later on, that's how the simulation calculates your sales, is each and every week over the course of an entire year. That will then influence, for example, your storage capacity, your energy rating that you would like that warehouse to then be, what sort of contract you want to lease it out for, and then lastly, these automatic order limits, which again can be important in terms of the forecasting that you may have done. What I'm moving at the moment is the automatic low point. This is the point at which you're going to place an order to your distributor/supplier. You are not a manufacturer of smartphones. So therefore, again, we need to take a look at the distribution tab, which I'll take a look at in a second, in order to actually create the phones. So for example, once inventory levels reach 50,000 units, an order is then placed to our distributor, where it can then take anywhere from 0 to 6 weeks to arrive, depending on a selection. Once it does arrive, you are purchasing the difference between the order low and the order high point. So for example, you are purchasing 50,000 units because it's the difference between 100,000 and 50,000, of course. But this is really important with keeping up with demand and supply, is setting good automatic order limits. And again, probably for one of the last times, always make sure you're pressing that save button. Other decisions that you're going to be taking is management decisions, where, for example, you can select your organizational structure based upon the number of countries you've entered into. Again, you're not limited to just one market. You can choose to enter as many as you would like. You'll also be able to choose your HQ location, with each location having a different impact, different taxes, and a different sustainability score. And last but not least, a management team that you can select. Each manager will have, of course, a different cost, but also different expertise. But also, you'll see that some of them will not be interested in your company. And that may be because you'll need to increase turnover, maybe do a little bit of networking through all of the decisions that you're taking. And one such decision is those management activities. For example, you'll select up to 3 different focus points, whether it's focusing on large clients, client meetings, but if you want some of those better managers, then networking could be the option for you. Next up is then HR. Under HR, this is going to be more around your employees day to day. So for example, you can select the workload, which could affect motivation levels. You can hire employees up to 25. You can fire employees based upon whether you're entering or exiting a market. You can choose the salaries that you would like to increase or remuneration. You can give them a percentage of the profits. You can give them bonuses for above, on, and below target performance. And last but not least, an education policy, where you can choose to give them a budget, you can choose to give the amount of time they need to spend training, and a few other courses and programs that you can choose for them to do. And again, really important that you're always pressing save. Next up is then product decisions, where you'll see in the first round, you will only be able to select 1 to 5 stars. The 6th and 7th star will be locked for you guys. However, they will be able to be unlocked based upon some of the decisions that I'll go over. But as you can see, 1 star has a very low cost and 5 star has a very high cost. And again, it's up to you to decide, maybe always thinking back to the strategy you've come up with. You can choose to make the agreement with the manufacturer more sustainable, but more importantly, you can conduct some research and development. You'll be able to hire researchers. You'll be able to then set a budget, which you can then see in the little blue box just below the R&D budget. This takes into account what slider you have adjusted here, but also the amount of researchers that you've allocated. Once you've done that, you'll then be able to focus on several different projects. Each project will have their different benefits. whether it's decreasing the purchasing costs, increasing the reliability, increasing the quality, innovation, which is like releasing a new model, so such as the iPhone 15 Plus or something like that, or Pro. And last but not least, you can commit some to sustainability. For each of these projects, there is a slider, and the slider represents the amount of time that is allocated or budget that is allocated to a specific project. So for example, only 10% of the resources is going towards the decreasing of purchasing costs. What that means is that you cannot exceed 100% across all 5 projects. So you can choose to either focus entirely on maybe just one research project, where you'll see significant progress in the bar just below, or you can choose to split your research. Again, it is up to you and your team members. But this is how you're going to gain a competitive advantage in later rounds in the simulation, is your ability to get one step ahead of your competition, whether it's through the purchasing cost, reliability, quality, innovation, or sustainability. But if we head into distribution, which is quite closely correlated back to the countries tab, if you remember correctly, where we'll see the different logistics service providers with a different cost, but also that delivery time that I mentioned, linking back to the automatic order limits, where based upon the order low point, it will take, for example, 3 weeks to arrive from the point that you've selected. Maybe you want to go with a slightly more reliable or sustainable supplier. However, it could take a little bit longer and could be a little bit more expensive, but that reliability and sustainability could be important for your business. But there is a variety of different providers to choose from, each having their different benefits, their different costs, but also their cons as well. But the final major operating decision that I'll be going over, and to round up this video, is the marketing decisions, which is the final step in the first round. And here you'll be able to develop a global offline campaign, spending X amount, choosing an intended campaign effect if you've spent enough money, some search engine optimization, but also online marketing. Starting off with advertising on search engines, where you can select a price per click. And I would highly recommend in the first round, you do not set a price per click that is anywhere above 10. Of course, you'll be able to change and you can set your own budgets, but this is just a recommendation for the first round. This is different to the monthly budgets that you set for social media. This is a price per click, and this is monthly. So you can spend 5,000 per month, 10,000 per month. Again, it is entirely up to you. But that is about it in terms of everything that you should be doing in the first round. Just to quickly recap, come up with your very own company profile, your company brand. Do a little bit of external analysis. So taking a look at the introduction text and seeing what the market demands are like. Head into the communication tab and the simulation schedule to see when the deadline is and when you need to input all of your decisions. Take a quick look, not necessary though, to look at your balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement. But more importantly, if there's anything that you should do, is focus on the business plan and operational decisions. Complete a competitive strategy, choose a vision statement, select up to 5 targets, choose sustainability policies, a growth strategy. If you would like, you can also fill in a SWOT analysis, but not necessary in the first round. Once you've done that, move on to decisions and go through every single tab except financial. So fill in the countries, choose a market to do business in, go through all of the management decisions, go through all of HR, product, distribution, and marketing. And once all of your decisions have been calculated and the deadline has been hit, you'll be given a new set of results to analyze, as well as your ranking being updated as well. But I'm going to go over the analysis tab in a feedback and Q&A video, which you can always find in the description just below if you've already completed your first round. But that is it from me, and I will wish you all good luck for this first round of the simulation. If you do have any questions, feel free to also reach out to us. In the top right-hand corner, there is a help desk button. Simply click it, fill in your email, fill in your question, and we should get back to you within 24 hours at the very minimum, but usually within 6 to 8. But that is about it. Thank you everyone for listening, and good luck with the simulation. Cheers everyone.